Welcome back for part 2 of my interview with Stephen Robles. If you missed part 1, check out episode 462 of Streamlined Solopreneur. In that episode, we talk about automating with Apple shortcuts. I wanted to talk about that first because that's the kind of stuff that Stephen talks about on his YouTube channel. So in this episode, we're really going to dive into how he grew his YouTube channel, even though talking about Apple and Apple tech is a pretty crowded field. I also ask him some pointed questions about what I should be doing on YouTube, benefit of being the podcast host, I guess. But he offers a lot of amazing advice if you are looking to grow on YouTube this year. So check it out. All of the links for all of the resources that Stephen mentioned will be in the show notes and over at streamlined.fm/463. But for now, let's get into part 2 of my interview with Stephen Robles. So let's switch gears. But you mentioned your YouTube channel, and you gave a great talk at PodFest this year. We were both speakers at PodFest this year.
Yeah.
But you gave a great talk about your YouTube channel and growth. And I'm kind of rolling it into this conversation because it sounds like shortcuts was kind of one of the reasons, or at least the iPhone was one of the reasons why your content started to take off. Is that an accurate characterization?
Yeah, it was a couple things. Shortcuts, I've always been passionate about it, and I followed guys like Matthew Casanelli and Federico Viticci. They're really the shortcuts Jedis that I look to.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I wanted to try is, let me do a really educational style showcasing of shortcuts to really help people learn how to build these and show them what's possible. And started doing that. It really resonated when the action button came on the iPhone 15 Pro, because now people realized, I can run a shortcut from this physical button, and they realized how useful it could be. And so one of the things that has helped grow my channel is finding that kind of content bucket where a large portion of my audience has subscribed to my channel and are specifically looking for that kind of content. And it's a self-generating content machine, because now I'm on my 19th shortcuts request specific video where I basically go to the YouTube comments, I'll go to my community, and I'll just build the shortcuts that people are asking for. That's like a 20-minute video piece of content right there. Great retention on that video because people, I'm talking about 15, 20 different shortcuts. People stick around to see if there's something that is useful to them. But now that is a piece of content that I can keep returning to even weekly, that I know my audience is interested in, and I'm doing their request. And so there's an automatic buy-in. And so that's been a backbone of my channel for the last couple years, building that in addition to all the other things. And, there's a few shortcuts videos that got like hundreds of thousands of views, but most of them don't. Most of them get between like 20, 50,000 views, which is still great. But the other thing to build the channel was find out how to cover Apple and technology slightly differently or at a different angle. And I hit a couple moments like that over the last couple years where it really helped the channel accelerate growth. When the iPhone 15 came out, USB-C was the newest feature. It was the one thing that everybody was probably curious about. And when the iPhone 15 came out, I did not get early access to the device. I didn't have an early review. So doing just a simple iPhone 15 review video, I knew would not do very well because my channel was not very big at the time and it was not differentiated enough. So I went the opposite direction. I said, I'm just going to hyper focus on this one change, the USB-C port. I'm going to connect as many things as I can to it, monitors, keyboards, SSDs, whatever. Make a video about that and see how it does. That video blew up. It's still one of my most viewed videos. I think it has like 500, 400,000 views. And so I turned right around and made a second one just like it and connected video game controllers. I tried all the suggestions from the first video in the comments. I tried them in the second video. And that video did several 100,000 views. And in that 1 month, September 2022, when the iPhone 15 came out, or was it, 2023, I got 10,000 subscribers in that 1 month from those two videos, really from the first video, and then the rest after that. So one video can really accelerate your growth, and it proved to me that you don't need to have 1 million subscribers to get that many views. What you need is a unique idea packaged well and executed well, and people will respond and people will comment and engage, and you'll find an audience that way. So just starting from scratch, not having an audience is not a roadblock. It is not an obstacle. The way the YouTube algorithm works today, you really can start from nothing today, which I'm actually planning on doing soon. I'm actually going to start another channel, not tech related, and see if I can challenge myself to reach an audience. But you can do that if you make great content, you package it well, and you provide value to people.
I love that. And I need to revise my comment from part 1 of this interview, because the USB-C video, you jogged my memory. That was the first one I found, right? Because I was like, oh, can I connect an external hard drive to my iPhone now? I think the answer then was no, but it is yes now. Or that work back then?
It was yes. I think the ProRes recording was still unclear at the time, but you could stick a flash drive in and access the files.
Right.
Release it. You can connect USB microphones to the iPhone, and that was another series of videos I did on the Riverside channel of like, you can connect USB mics, you can connect audio interfaces, you can connect all kinds of stuff to the iPhone, and it's pretty wild. So yeah, that's what I did.
Yes. Related, at Podfest, right? Because they didn't have Wi-Fi, and they had a HDMI connector, right?
Right.
So I let the room I was speaking in use my dongle the whole time. I was right before lunch. I did something to the display, and my laptop, my Mac, was not projecting to the projector, right?
Oh man.
And so I was using Canva for my slides, and I plugged the dongle into my iPhone, and I ran my presentation from my iPhone.
That's wild.
Yeah, I was
Nice.
like, God, I hope I don't get a notification or something, like a dumb notification.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it worked out pretty well. I forgot to turn off like sleep, so it would like turn off.
Right.
But you know, at the end of the talk, when people are just asking questions, that doesn't matter that much. So
That's just to call back to the other part of your show. That's one of the shortcuts I have when I record a video, and I'm going to be using my iPhone in the video. The shortcut lowers the brightness of my screen, turns on dark mode, and then sends me over to the settings pane for auto lock, and so I can set it to never, waits 2 seconds so I can actually make that change, and then sends me over to the accessibility display settings where I can toggle off auto brightness so it stays at the brightness that I set in the shortcut. And then I have another shortcut that I run when I'm done recording where I go enable auto brightness, put the auto lock back on 30 seconds, sets my brightness back to what it was, and then it turns off do not disturb. So yeah, useful shortcuts there.
yeah, that's great. It would be slightly more useful if Apple let us like actually change those, right?
Yes, it would be nice if there were just straight toggles, which I understand if you had a toggle for every setting, that would be a lot of toggles, but yeah, I would
Right.
love for those two to have a toggle, please. That'd
Yeah.
be nice.
I know one for me, not to go back to the shortcuts talk, but my yearly theme this year is the year of being present. And so I want to track my screen time week to week. And so I have a shortcut that runs every Sunday at noon that the phone has to be unlocked for this, first of all, right? That opens up the screen time, takes a screenshot, and then gets like, I think it's like the 11th line, like converts the screenshot to text and then gets like the 11th line, which is usually my screen time for the week. And then it saves it to a note because you only get like a month worth of history, I think, in the screen time app or something. It was like shockingly little time. So,
that's really good. One thing I would recommend, I've been using ChatGPT to parse images in shortcuts because I find that to be more reliable than using OCR and split text commands. And so I'll take a screenshot. Then you have to use the AI Actions app. It's a third-party app. You need a ChatGPT API. But you can send an image to ChatGPT with a prompt and tell it, here's an image of my screen time settings. Find this number and then output just this. Then you can take that output, convert it to text, add it to a note, and I find that to be pretty reliable.
Yes, that's so much better. Because let me tell you, like, if the scroll is off just a little bit,
Exactly.
I get the wrong
Right.
thing, right?
Right. So that yeah, asking ChatGPTs for stuff like that is really useful.
That's awesome. And to add to that, I just started working with the ChatGPT API,
Mhm.
and it's like stupid cheap, like
Yeah.
stupid cheap.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
thought like sending transcripts to it would cost me like, I thought I would blow through like $10 a month pretty quickly. It's like 6 cents for a
Yeah.
transcript.
Now for
It's
transcripts
unbelievable.
though, I use a Transcriptionist, the app, and I really like
Okay,
that one. It's on the
nice.
Mac and the iPhone, and you can just give it audio files and it transcribes it. So I really like that.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, because that's one thing. If I like, I've been using Whisper Memos to record my solo episode, so like I de facto get a transcript.
Right.
But if I need to transcribe something from my phone, it's a pain in the neck.
Well,
So
Transcriptionist's got an app right on your phone.
awesome transcription. Okay, so I'm getting. I knew this would happen. Transcriptionist, and then during your YouTube talk, you mentioned one that I wrote down, but I don't have immediately in front of me. Editing
For Gling.ai.
and right. Yes.
Gling.ai is the website. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. So again, rich show notes for this two-parter. All of the links will be at streamlined.fm/462, despite this technically being episode 463 now. So everything will be in the description anyway. But yeah, that one sounds like a game changer to me because like I'll do a bunch of takes and I'll usually use like recut to get like long silences, but the bad takes manual process usually. So I'm really excited to do that, to try that one.
Gling.ai is the only way I can produce as many videos as I do. Even if I just record something for 2 minutes, I just get irritated if I have to edit it manually. And so even if it's a 2-minute video, I will put it through Gling.ai so it can cut the silences, cut the bad takes, and it just expedites all of the video workflows. So it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and this is kind of a good segue into another thing that you mentioned in your talk, right? Is that you produced pretty consistently as part of that growth, right? And like part of that is, yeah, you need a good, like having ideas, which it sounds like you have a pretty good, I feel like flywheel was a buzzword in like 23, 24, but like you have a good flywheel for getting content ideas, but then it's like the actual production side of it is really important. So like what is your cadence? What's your recording and editing process like? And because you're also a one-man band, right? You don't
Yep.
have a team of people.
No. It is not set in stone at all. I will try, like even I was a few minutes late to our recording because I saw an hour gap in my schedule just earlier today, and I was like, I think I could record a video in that hour. And so I did, and that was my recording thing. And so as soon as we're done here, I'm going to put that through Gling.ai. And the way I record, I have my top-down camera. I might have a third angle, my screen grab. I record everything at the same time. So like while I'm recording my A-roll, if I'm talking about the iPhone or whatever, I'm doing it all at the same time. So when I go into Final Cut to edit it, I'm just changing angles. And a lot of times it's like I just change all the angles at once because it's just all focused on the device I'm talking about. And so I kind of edit in my recording. As I record, I'm capturing the B-roll. As I'm recording, I'm doing the screen grab. And that makes the editing process way faster. And so I have a reminders list with video ideas. It's actually in the Kanban view. That was a recent iOS 18 change. And so I have a row of in progress. So the videos I'm kind of working on immediately, either recorded and need to edit or need to record. And then I have an entire list of just ideas. Some of them are evergreen, so I can go back and make that video whenever, if there's ever a lull. Some are slightly timely, but, they can be anytime in the next couple months. And so I just constantly add to those lists. Shortcuts is always on there somewhere as a video I'm going to do. Smart home type videos, I'll always have a couple of those at the ready. So just having that ongoing list and being able to pull from it at any time means that when I have a couple hours that open up, or if I see in my week, oh, this is an open afternoon, I'm going to jump in there and try to make a video real quick.
Nice. I love that. And then, so what do you use for you have like a dedicated overhead camera?
Yep. I have my main camera is Sony A7 IV. My top down is Sony A6400, and those just never move. I just never take them out of here. Those are my two cameras. If I need a third angle, I was using an iPhone. I had an iPhone 14 around here, and so I would set that up on a tripod, kind of have like that third angle looking at my desk if I'm doing like an accessories video.
Mm-hmm.
But I recently got the Osmo Pocket 3, and I absolutely love that thing. And so that's my third camera. If I want a third angle, or if I'm going to film anytime outside the studio, I was using my iPhone before, but now I just really love the Osmo, so I just use that.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know. Because like I usually, I have my iPhone 16 Pro. I'll usually record on that with the DJI mic when I'm out of the house when I want another angle. But, I like having something else on my phone instead of like making it a dedicated camera.
Yeah.
So, or like,
if you want to record with the rear camera, which is the best camera, you immediately have the how do I monitor myself problem. And you can use your iPad with Final Cut Camera, but now you have a second device and you have to figure out where do I prop up my iPad. And it's just like when I got the Osmo Pocket 3, I was like, oh, I can just flip this camera around and I got a preview screen right here. Like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, like, I mean, I don't know how you're managing. Well, you usually, when you do your shortcut, like build shortcut videos, are you using the iPhone mirroring now, or are you, do you have like a camera on your iPhone and you're just like kind of showing that?
Yeah, it's just my top-down camera pointed at my iPhone, and I just do it all here. I'll look like this usually. I'm doing the shortcut over here, and I'm looking this way, like while I'm recording.
Yeah.
And I just do it all here.
Nice. That's probably better because people can actually see what you're tapping, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I try to, whether it's tip videos or shortcuts, I try to do it live on camera rather than a screen recording, because I find like even just the abstraction of like where is the finger, like where are you tapping, is enough of a break in the continuity where people might not understand how to do the thing. And so I just resolved that if I'm going to do a how-to, tips, shortcuts, or whatever, I'm just going to do it on my phone physically with my finger, and the camera's going to capture that because I think that's the easiest, most digestible way for someone unfamiliar with the topic to be able to understand it.
Yeah, I think that's right? Because I mean, like a screen recording, what you press is not always clear. It's like pretty ambiguous a lot of the time. So
yeah.
It's definitely not good for learners, right? And even if you're narrating, right, the combination of hearing and seeing is really what makes a lesson stick.
Right, for sure.
So how do you record all of these camera angles at once? Will disclose here that you work for Riverside, but I'm wondering if there are other apps that you use for that sort of stuff.
Well, I use Riverside for my video podcast every week, Primary Technology, and that's 100% makes that process incredibly easy. I edit that show in less than an hour, and it's like we're done recording and it's published within 2 hours. And that's me making the thumbnails, the artwork, the bonus episodes, everything. But when I record my YouTube videos, I just record everything to the SD cards on all the cameras. I import all the footage. And then in Gling.ai, I give it my A-roll file where I'm talking. That's so it does all the removing silences and bad takes. And then I can export from Gling a multicam clip. And so when I import that XML into Final Cut, it actually is a multicam clip with all the cuts, removing silences and bad takes. And then I can add my B-roll camera, my screen grab, my audio track. I sync it all via audio. And then when I go back to the project, it still retains all the edits, but now I can switch between the angles in the timeline. And my process is basically like, I can tell when I'm in Final Cut looking at the footage, if I'm doing this, I'm doing something on my phone. And so that's a B-roll shot. If I look like this and I'm looking this way, I know it's a screen grab shot. And so I can visually just scrub along the timeline and say, oh, okay, B-roll, B-roll, screen grab, B-roll, screen grab. I'll just select all the clips, and then I go into the info tab and change the angle, see all the other kinds of clips, change that angle, And I'm almost done editing. I mean, I'll add the chapters. I might add some text overlays just to emphasize points. And then I'm done. That's it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's to provide maybe like a secondary workflow, right? Because this sounds good. I hate editing. I use Ecamm Live for recording, especially with my Stream Deck. It's really easy for me to add overlays kind of while I'm talking. But like the roll side is not something I really cracked. With Ecamm Live, like it does treat each camera feed differently, and so you get the combined when you switch scenes, but you can also get just the full A roll, B roll, separate audio. And so all that stuff combined with Gling sounds like it's definitely something I'm excited to try, because otherwise I use ScreenFlow. I'm just really used to using ScreenFlow for editing. My audio I'll put through Logic Pro and then I'll spit that out and I'll put it in ScreenFlow. But I'm just watching myself on 2x, and I kind of know generally where I want to make edits based on that.
Right, for sure.
So
I do all my audio through Isotope, RX10 for what it's worth. I do a de-esser, de-breath, and sometimes a couple other things. But yeah, I do that round trip also.
Yeah. I have the Isotope plugins in Logic Pro. I was just using the native app. I don't know. There was something about the integration in Logic Pro felt nicer to me for whatever reason.
I use the native app only because in Final Cut, for some reason, if I apply like a de-breather, it will just cut off the ends of audio clips randomly, and I don't know what that bug is, and so I just like forget it. So I just process the audio in Isotope and then bring it over.
Yeah, I know. Like if I try to use Isotope, you could use it in ScreenFlow too, but like ScreenFlow just like chokes on that. Like I'm really used to ScreenFlow, but if you deviate from like the core mission of ScreenFlow, which is like record the screen, it doesn't. It's not always the best.
See,
but it's still the fastest.
I use CleanShot X for my screen grabs.
Yes, which is so good. Such a great app.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, I'm not even using ScreenFlow to record anymore. I do everything in Ecamm Live and just bring it into ScreenFlow. Because that is where my muscle memory is the fastest. And they have like Stream Deck buttons for like scrubbing through and cutting and things like that, which shout out to David Sparks again for those. This is great. Okay, so I want to wrap up with two questions. I'm going to ask this one and get it out of the way because I think the next question is going to give a longer answer. But a question that you got at Podfest, predictably, was should I have my podcast on my main YouTube channel? I'm going to ask you something in a similar vein for me personally, because what else is a podcast for, right? But this show is currently on its own channel, and I have changed the scope of both my channel and this show so that they are much closer together. Like my channel used to be just like, well, WordPress stuff originally, then podcast stuff, which I know now I should have just started another channel, but that one's monetized and I didn't want to do that. And like this show was always like focused on solopreneurs, and now again they're kind of smashing together. My question is, based on what you know about the YouTube algorithm, which I know could be a black box, should I combine these channels? Is it worth the work? Because like my VA is going to have to re-upload everything, right? Like I'll have it ingest the RSS, but then I'm going to have my VA re-upload any videos, right?
I don't know about that particular situation. I was growing my YouTube channel and then started my podcast, Primary Technology, a year ago, and I could have had the podcast be on my main channel, but I decided not to. One, because my main channel, I purposely wanted to have it more represent me as a creator, and I wanted to talk about multiple things. I want to talk about smart home, shortcuts, iPhone tips, whatever. And so I purposely separated it and said, all right, well, I'm going to make a channel for my podcast, and it's just going to be that. And I wanted to post shorts and maybe even like 8 to 10 minute clips of the full hour-long episodes. And I'm like, I just want that to be its own channel. And also I have a co-host, and so as we are monetized and all that, and then easier to see revenue-wise, like, okay, all the views here are not. And honestly, I've had several episodes of that, my Primary Tech podcast, hit like 15,000 views, 17,000 views, and that's with like 500 to 1,000 subscribers. So again, just because it's a newer channel with less subscribers doesn't mean it won't get the views. Again, that's kind of what we all have to come to terms with, is like, what do people actually want to watch, and is the content worthwhile? So, you know, if someone's podcast is very tightly integrated with the content that they're producing just solo in videos, sure, do that. I think especially if it is a less frequent podcast, like once a month or sporadic, sure, put that on the channel that is the same kind of content. You know, I imagine like if it's a family travel vlog channel, and every video is the family traveling, doing stuff, and then the husband and wife are going to do a podcast, or the partner is going to do a podcast, and it's, again, about the traveling and the family and all that, then, yeah, put that on the same channel. I think so. But for a lot of people, especially if you already have established multiple channels, maybe just keep them separate, but right-size your expectations as far as the podcast channel is not going to be as big, but that's okay. You know, what is really the purpose of it? Why, you know, how big am I actually trying to grow it, and for what reason? So I think you just have to ask those questions to yourself.
Yeah, I guess that's a really good point, right? It's a channel because I want to have a presence in the YouTube Music app. And so
right,
the work probably isn't worth it for me to move everything over to the main Joe Casabona channel when it's been established for a long time, like basically since Tom Webster gave a talk at like Podcast Movement 2018 or something like that. I was like, oh, I should put I'll do like audio only to YouTube, right? So like probably doesn't make sense. Do you change the titles for the podcast feed versus the podcast version of the YouTube? Nope, the YouTube version of the podcast episode.
No, because honestly, podcast episode titles, even in audio-only format, you really need to be conscious of packaging it well also. So if I'm going to put a title in YouTube that I think people are going to click, I want that title in the audio version too. And this is something where you'll see long-established podcasts be cute with the names of their episodes. You know, maybe it's a funny line from the episode or a kind of an inside joke. And so you'll see the episode titles and you're like, I thought this was a tech podcast. What are these titles about?
Right.
And, you know, if you already have a huge audience, do whatever you want. You know, who cares? But if you're trying to grow a podcast or you're launching a new podcast, you need to think of your titles as like the first thing someone sees of your show. And so if someone comes across an episode of your show and your title is like, blew my nose yesterday or whatever, like it might be hilarious to your regular audience, but someone new, they're not going to click. They're not interested. And so I title both the video and audio versions of my podcast the same way because I want to appeal to that new listener or new viewer and make it attractive to them. And so I jam the title with the things that we cover. I try to make it interesting. And if I put that work into it, I want it both places.
Yeah, which is a really good point. This was my follow-up question, right? Is the importance of packaging, right? I don't think can be understated on YouTube. And so like one mistake that I make with this podcast is I have like a custom episode artwork thumbnail for the podcast apps, and the YouTube thumbnail is just like basically a bigger version of that. And I'm very well aware that that is not a good YouTube thumbnail. So like how much time do you spend on thumbnails? Do you do the A/B testing? You know, and what kind of impact does it really make for your videos?
Well, the impact is potentially huge. For my personal channel, I will do thumbnail A/B testing. I might do 3 thumbnails altogether with just minor changes. And if I see a video is not performing well, but I know it is a good video that people would enjoy, I will change that title 4, 5, 6 times, not in rapid succession. I'll change it, wait a few hours, see how it's performing, because that can make a big difference. Just the title alone, even if you don't change the thumbnail. But I've also gone back and changed the thumbnail as well. So definitely experiment. And if you find that something is performing way less than usual, think about tweaking that title, tweaking that thumbnail. But when it comes to the podcast artwork versus thumbnail, ironically, I do kind of like what you're saying. It's a slightly larger version, but when I make my square artwork for podcast apps, I put elements of things we talked about in that show that week, and I make it visually appealing. And then for the YouTube thumbnail, I take those same elements, but I superimpose me and my co-host's faces from the show on the thumbnail. So if you look on either side of the thumbnail, you're going to see us. And I typically choose a moment where we're laughing or smiling or things like that. Because listen, faces do well on YouTube. I mean, that's just bottom line.
Right.
So if you see our thumbnails, that'll be the biggest difference. You see me and Jason, my co-host, big on the thumbnail. You'll see all the same elements. And then I also put in the thumbnail episode 61 and primary technology, the title. Whether you need to do that or not, maybe not. But because with YouTube, podcast episodes might be right next to a Ryan Trahan video or right next to a Verge review, I like people being able to ascertain quickly, like, oh, that's a podcast. So I feel like putting the EP episode with the number right on the thumbnail, it's an immediate like, oh, that's a podcast. And they're not going to be surprised by clicking that thumbnail or title and then just see two dudes talking. Like, it'll be obvious that that's a show.
I like that. I like that a lot. And with the title tweaks, it really just takes a couple of hours, huh?
Well, again, depending on your channel and how much you're reaching, if you were earlier on, smaller channel, I would change it once a day at the most and then see what happens. But a title makes a huge difference. And what's a great use of ChatGPT? I will brainstorm with ChatGPT a lot. I'll say, for one thing is I transcribe my videos using Transcriptionist, give the entire transcript to ChatGPT, and I ask it for title and description ideas based on the transcript. It'll give me a title idea, and I can see whether I like it or not. And then in that same conversation, I'll say, give me 5 more title ideas based with this change, or 5 more title ideas focused on this word, or 5 more including these words. It'll give me 5 more title ideas. I'll see if I lean any which way, and then I'll ask it for 5 more based on the one that I liked in the previous prompt. And I might do that 5 or 6 times, and it's interesting how you can really get down to a great title that drives curiosity and interest. It's shorter, it could be punchier, whatever it is. You can really change how a video performs by getting just the right title to accompany the thumbnail and the video itself. So recommend.
Awesome. Really good advice to end on, I think, right? Spend time on your titles and thumbnails. I have a standing to-do item for when I have like an afternoon to just go through some videos that I think are good but are underperforming and just change the title and the thumbnails. And I know like CGP Grey mentioned this on Cortex, that one year when he was not producing a lot of videos, changing the title and thumbnails to previous or of older videos saved his income that year because it like really boosted those videos.
Makes a huge difference.
So it's a little frustrating to think that you might have spent all this time or a couple of hours right on a video and the title and the thumbnail are the thing that's going to drive it, but people need to find, right? I mean, the video keeps them watching, but you need to make the packaging appealing so that people want to watch it.
And it's one of those things where everybody's a salesman in one way or another. And so if you're trying to create on YouTube, you're selling yourself and you're selling your content. Right. And, marketing, I know for me and for a lot of people, it kind of feels almost like a dirty word because it's like, oh, marketing, you're just trying to get people to click. It's like, well, if you believe in what you made and you really you think you've made something of value that people would want to see, then marketing that is the answer. Packaging it well that someone actually clicks it and gets through to actually see it. That's a big deal. So spend time doing it. It is worthwhile and really can make all the difference.
Yeah. And it also signals to people like there's a reason that Apple or Studio Neat or 12 South, like high end products, spend a lot of time on actual packaging, right? It's because you bought something premium and you don't want to feel like it's wrapped in tissue paper, right?
Sure.
And so like if you have a crappy thumbnail and just like a video about shortcuts is the title, like people won't feel like you spent a lot of time on the video because you rushed the first thing that they see, right? It's the first impression.
Right. Yeah.
So I like if you're not watching the video, Steven's laughing because that's like a little bit of a ridiculous analogy, but longtime listeners know that I'm the king of ridiculous analogies.
Very good.
Awesome. Well, Steven, this has been an absolute blast. Thanks so much for joining us for a little over an hour over these 2 episodes. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
You can go to beard.fm, and that has everything. You know, it's got my links everywhere. And
So good.
You can go directly to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@beardfm. My podcast is Primary Technology, also on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about shortcuts and just join my community, you can DM me, create.beard.fm. Have almost 1,000 people there building shortcuts, talking about automations and stuff like that. So all those places.
Awesome. I will link to that and all of the things that we talked about over at streamlined.fm/462. Steven, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It was a pleasure.
Thanks again so much to Steven for spending over an hour with us talking about Apple shortcuts and YouTube. I hope you learned a lot. I certainly did. I am buzzing with ideas because I think that YouTube, outside of this podcast, or really in conjunction with this podcast, is going to be my best growth lever this year. And so I'm really grateful for Steven spending some extra time with us today. For everything that we talked about and both parts of the episode, you can go over to streamlined.fm/463. If you like these 2-part episodes, this is the second one I've done this year, let me know. You can head over to streamlinedfeedback.com. That's streamlined with a D, feedback.com. The link is in the description. I don't know why I'm enunciating so much. And let me know what you think of these 2-part episodes. Thanks so much for listening. And until next time, I'll see you out there.